I've done this a couple of times with Trevor Mill Iron, so I wasn't sure that I was ready to fly solo on this. But, we'll give it a shot. I am this morning wearing one of my Christmas presents. My son, who lives in California, gave me this. And when I opened it, he proudly announced that he bought it at a thrift store, secondhand store, for $3. And then he told me that it's a very unusual thrift store. They only sell merchandise that was cast off of television and movie sets. And so most of his Christmas shopping he did there. So my grandson got a pair of pajamas that were worn by one of Ben Stiller's children in one of those movies. My wife got a pair of flip-flops that were worn by a female character in an Adam Sandler film. And this tie, drum roll, wait for it, General Hospital. Well, thank you, Josiah. Interesting choice of a gift for me. But it wasn't the oddest useful or semi-useful Christmas present I got. My other son gave me this, which looks suspiciously like a guitar pick, but it isn't. It's an iPad stylus, shaped to look like a guitar pick. Oh, how cool. And as I've been playing with it, it really isn't very good as a guitar pick or as a stylus. I'm not quite sure what to do with it, except I thought it's a nice novelty. And it's a nice object lesson, because when the iPad and the iPhone were first developed, Apple was very determined to create a touch system that didn't use a stylus. That was their big deal. And they hated, Steve Jobs hated styluses. He disliked the fact that you had to use styluses with the old Palm Pilots and all of the other touch screen type of devices that were out at that time. So he was very determined to create something that didn't use a stylus. When the iPhone came out, it didn't work with any of the styluses that were on the market. And very quickly a cottage industry grew up of companies making styluses that do work on the iPad and the iPhone, which illustrates a principle from my discipline in communication, that you create technologies, but you can't control what users will do with those technologies many times. Users will come up with unique things, interesting ideas, and sometimes bend the technology in a way you don't intend them to do or expect them to do. And this is certainly true with the iPad, because it is a technology that is so open-ended. And I think the kind of the first thing that strikes me when I think about this, it is clearly the best toy that I've ever owned. It is an amazing toy. And it's an amazing toy for the simple reason that it's a new toy every time I download a new app. That's the thing that's so remarkable about it. You know, a new toy is always the best toy. It's the one kids want to play with, the new one, the one they haven't played with before. And this is an unlimited toy, because it keeps expanding in possibility every time you download something. So it certainly is a great toy. Is it a great production tool? Is it a great classroom tool? Is it something that we can really get some value out of in the class? And that's why I said, is it really a work of genius, or is it just a gimmick? Is this something that is fun, kind of you can do something surprising or interesting and get some value from it? So I want to start with just a few introductory comments that I have pondered over since I've been using an iPad. Some of these come from other sources. Some of them are sort of my own thinking. There's 3 or 4 of these, and then I want to move from there into showing you a concrete example of how I've used it, along with some apps that I found useful, and then open the floor up for those of you who have been using tablet devices generally, or iPad specifically. What have you found useful? What are you using? What do you like? If you're not using one or haven't used one, what are the things you think you might be interested in doing with one that would, you want to know, does it lend itself to that? So my first comment is one that is not my own. This is one that everybody has made from the first review I ever read of an iPad, is that it is a great device for consumption, not such a great device for production of media. As if you want to read a novel, iPad, Kindle, tablet computers are fabulous. You want to write a novel, not so great. People are doing it. People are writing novels on it, or trying to. But this has been the rap that has been on tablet computers since the day the iPad was released, and I've heard it over and over again in the media and from people who use them. fabulous thing to consume, not so great for production. So I want, one of the things I want to ask you, you guys who've been using it when we get, a little later on, is this an accurate perception, or is that something that's changing with the release of new apps that allow you to do productive things? Second thing is a comment that I don't think I've seen anywhere, but it really has struck me, is that we need to take the I in iPad seriously. It is a personal device. It is an intimately personal device. If you have a vision of getting this and somehow having it enhance collaborative learning in your classroom, probably not going to happen. Unless everybody's got one, then maybe. But it is a very personal device. I was not intending to get an iPad 1. I knew that, there's always a 2 coming along, so I didn't have any interest in buying. I was vaguely interested, but I didn't want to spend money on an iPad 1. But one of my sons worked at McKay's at the time, and shortly before Christmas that year, he called me and said, hey, we just got an iPad in. Looks perfect, looks flawless, and they look like they've never been used, and I can get it with my employee discount. I said, yes, get it. And so we got an iPad 1, and my wife and I tried sharing it, and it just didn't work. She would get to reading a book on it, and I'd want it for something, and so as soon as the iPad 2 came along, I got one, because I realized she really enjoys reading on it. She loved reading on it, and so she's happy reading on the iPad 1. I was wanting to do some things that only the iPad 2 could do, so that, but it's very personal. If it's hard to share between a husband and wife, I mean, how much harder in a collaborative situation? I can't imagine a situation in which the university would buy every department an iPad that you could check in and out and use. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I can't imagine a situation where the university would say, well, you can get an iPad along with your PC. And I just don't, it doesn't work like a computer in that sense. And one of the reasons is because you personalize it. The moment you get this thing, you start downloading apps on it. And within 24 hours, if you're a normal user, yours doesn't look like anybody else's. It's so personal. And there's positive things to that as well. But it does mean there's limitations on what you can do in a classroom. Okay, third point. I am not really a techie. I know some people think I'm on tech committees and stuff, but I'm really not a techie type person at all. So for me, the important thing with this is what kind of a tool is it? Is it a tool that functions in a way that allows me to get some things done that I want to do? And so that's my bottom line. So as I think about that, what are the functions that I as an academic want to do? Obviously, reading and research is something I want to do, and we all do this. We read for our classes, we read for research that we're doing, and so on. And I would say as a reading research tool, it probably gets an A, maybe even an A+. It is a remarkable reading device. And the nice thing about it is that you can put all sorts of stuff on here and have it available to you everywhere you go. And that's the really nice thing about it. So definitely think that's one of the places. I'll show you a few of the apps that I found useful in this. Writing, not so good, I think. I've tried writing on it a bit, and at best I'm going to give it a C or C- on writing in my experience so far. And again, remember that I piece, it's very personal. You may find a different response to it than I have, but I haven't found it to be a terrifically good writing tool. I have read online comments by people who say, I'm writing a book on my iPad, or I'm writing a novel or a screenplay. It can be done. I just don't think it's great at it. I'll show you some of the writing tools that are out there. Obviously, organizing and storing things. We all, as academics, we organize information constantly. We store information. We want to be able to get our hands on information. Now, this is an intriguing one to me with an iPad because the form factor of it, the smallness of it, the lightweight, the fact that you can carry it so easily wherever you go, makes it the ideal thing to have everything you ever want to have access to on for your classes. So if you have PowerPoints, yes, I know we can get to them through the network, but what if the network happened to be down? Or what if you were in a setting where the network isn't available? Or, for some reason you don't want to. I often have students do presentations and they want to log into their account, do a presentation, and then I want to get up and jump up and show something. Well, do I log them out, having it all available right here? I can just plug it in as I have today. Now, I do want to make the disclaimer, this is an iPad 2 that'll do this. iPad 1s don't do what I'm doing right now very easily. That is, plug into the system and display the contents of the screen. But it definitely has got some value here. Maybe not an A on this one, maybe I give it a B, but it certainly has some value in this way. And then for me, a big deal academically is presentation, because that's what, we do presentations all the time in our classes. And many of us feel dissatisfied with PowerPoint for various reasons. I read an article last year that said power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. A lot of us feel frustrated with PowerPoint for various reasons. I'm not really that frustrated with PowerPoint, but I do recognize there are limitations to it, and there's things I'd like to do that PowerPoint doesn't lend itself to well. And so, is it a good presentation tool? Which, I mean, obviously I'm using it as one right now, so I think it is adequate. And we'll look at a couple of those. Now, let me just say a comment about this presentation, which is now over. This presentation is not a Prezi, which it may have looked like to those of you who've used Prezi. This comes from an iPad application that I have just recently tried out, which is called Shared Paper. It has the same concept as Prezi, which is you put information anywhere you want to on a gigantic whiteboard that goes on forever in all directions, and then turn it into slides as you wish. Now, this is a very simple little presentation, but the thing that I think is cool about it is I threw this presentation together sitting in the doctor's waiting room while my wife was waiting for a medical appointment on Monday, which I would not have done on a laptop. I know I could take a laptop into the doctor's waiting room, but I'm not going to. But I easily took the iPad in and enjoyed being absorbed in that, which I was both learning this little app and throwing this together. It does vector graphics, which, if you know much of anything about graphics, is pretty cool, because if I choose a line and choose a color, and then say I want to draw a square, it didn't work. It should draw a square for me. There we go. That changes my rough drawing into a vector, which is pretty cool. And it's still editable as a vector, so I can change its size and shape as those of you who've done vector graphics before, you recognize that's a pretty cool tool to be able to use with a presentation device. It's simple, it's not very sophisticated, but kind of a neat little presentation tool. All right, let me just very briefly look at a couple of apps that I find useful in these four categories of reading, writing, storage, organization, and presentation. Would not want to go through without mentioning the YouVersion version of the Bible. If you have an iDevice and you don't have this, get it immediately. Don't wait, because this is just a marvelous tool. It has many translations available, and you can, if you are online, you can instantly switch between them. If you're not online, the ones that have these little green icons on them can be downloaded when you are online, so that they're available to you all the time when you're offline. So I think that's just a marvelous little tool. My church has been using this. The sermon notes and outline are live on YouVersion at my church while the service is going on. So if I want to bring my iPad to church, which I normally do, or iPhone, either one, I can go to YouVersion and go to my church. It actually finds it by location. It uses the location, geolocation of it. Finds my church, just tap on the service, and it pops up with the sermon outline and links to every scripture that the pastor intends to use. So he doesn't always use the ones he intends to use, but the ones he intends to use are all linked. All I have to do is hit the button and immediately take you to the script. Really great tool. So definitely something everybody ought to have. Maybe a little more specialized, but one that I found quite interesting is called Net Bible 1. This one does require that you have an internet connection. But it's interesting because down the left-hand side of the screen, you've got the Bible in it's a proprietary translation of the people who put this particular version out. So it's not NIV it is their own net translation. Down the right-hand side, you've got in this what I've got showing right now are translation notes. So if you are a Bible scholar and you want to do some research into how something was translated, why it was translated, those notes are there. And if you are interested in the Greek and the Hebrew, it's there. So you can parallel the Greek and the English. Or you can go to articles, and they link to online articles written by various Christians in various places and times related to the scripture under investigation. Now, I don't know exactly who these people are who did this, or if there is some denominational or theological bias to how they link articles, but there is a lot of usefulness in something like this, and I've really enjoyed working with it. I occasionally teach an adult Sunday school class, and I found this was a very, very helpful tool as I was preparing for that, as well as some things, and of course in terms of how do you get to different things. You just touched the scripture there. You could go to whatever passage, Old or New Testament, you're interested in, and then go to whatever chapter or verse you want to go, and it will take you there. It's a little slow because it works off of the internet, and YouVersion Bible is much quicker. And I'm going to drop it out. Okay, also for reading, I have found Goodreader to be a pretty indispensable application. It's a $5 application. And it is an application that allows you to read almost any kind of text that can be read. So here I've got Christian libel case. That's an example I use with my media law class. It is a Microsoft Word document. And all I have to do is click on it, and I've got these notes about this time where a Christian was sued for libeling an author in a sermon. Interesting story that's helps students understand a little bit. Here's the faculty constitution, which I put on there when we were talking about it in faculty seminar last semester. Here's a PDF document. This is actually the entire book of a book called Humiliation of the Word by Jacques Ellul, which I was reading this summer for some of my personal research. And I happened to find a PDF of the entire book available online, and popped it on there and then just spent some time reading it. Also, here's an HTML. Also this summer I was doing some reading in John of Damascus about images, doing some research on word and image and the relative values. And John of Damascus, an Orthodox theologian who defended icons and laid out actually what amounts to a relatively early theology of semiotics, theory of semiotics. So there's that. So as a reading device, wonderful thing, and these are great. This is a great tool. A good reader. Even any kind of PDF, even music, whatever you're interested in. So that's a nice kind of all-purpose reading tool. You want to read a Microsoft Word document, you want to read a website, whatever. Those things are all there. So that's a good one. One I'm not going to talk much about, but Media Overdrive, you can see over here in the corner, it's a free app. Overdrive is a library application. And if you have a library card of a participating library, you can go to Media Overdrive and check out books and read them electronically. And Bradley County, Cleveland Bradley County cooperates in this, so you can do it there. Hamilton County, so if you have a Hamilton County library card, you can check out 2 books at a time. And it's a limited selection, but it's a pretty interesting selection. A lot of bestsellers, a lot of contemporary, what might be in the recent fiction rack of the library, and it's never there because somebody else got it checked out, is available. When I first started using Overdrive, anything that was available I could get. Now there's waiting lists because people are starting to use it. Anyway, obviously Kindle, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and Apple's iBooks are good readers. And one that ever since I've had an iPad, I've read these things that say, here are the apps you absolutely must get. And Instapaper kept showing up as you must get this app, and I just kept resisting, didn't get it. So finally, a couple days ago, I said, okay, I'm doing this presentation, and give me a justification to try it. It's $5, but I'll get it. So I got Instapaper. Instapaper is absolutely amazing. I don't know how I got along without it. And what Instapaper does, and I hope this works, is suppose I find, and this is actually one I already got, so let me just pick a, let's see if I can find an article. So suppose I find an article I'm interested in reading, and it's fairly long. So none of these are going to be fairly long, but let me just grab one at random. Suppose for some reason I decide I'm interested in reading this, but I want to read it right now, because I don't have time. I want to read it later when I'm sitting in that proverbial doctor's waiting office. I touch the Instapaper book link, and it says it's saved, so what? So then I go to Instapaper, and I update. Now my article is on my iPad, available for offline reading whenever I want to. Don't need an internet connection, and it's available for as long as I want to keep it. So why is this valuable to me? I am always finding articles that relate to classes I teach, particularly my media law class. Over Christmas, I was trying not to think about media law. And just reading the news, I found 3 articles that I'm going to use this semester. It's kind of just casually, I was sitting at breakfast reading the news, and I hit this, oh my gosh, copyright, I got to talk about that one. So, this is great. I'm going to simply save it. Now I've got it available to me, and I don't even have to worry about it at the time. Because you know how hard it is to find something online later. You go back looking for it. So I've just started using Instapaper. I'm like, whoa, why didn't I know about this? Well, I did know about it. Why didn't I get it? That's reading. Writing, a little less stuff available. What you find for writing is things like Apple's Pages, which works perfectly well for me for what I need to do with writing, which is get Microsoft Word documents off of my computer onto my iPad so that I can edit them. Goodreader, I can read them. This one, I can edit them. And then send them back to myself as a Microsoft Word document. So I really could care less about Apple's iWorks suite. I want my stuff in Word format, and Apple's Pages does that. Here's my Christianity Media syllabus. I used Dropbox to open it in Pages. And I've been working on it the last couple of days whenever I've had a few minutes to just kind of spare and fiddle around with it, adding editing to it. As those of you who've used these know, you just have to touch and the keyboard comes up, various other editing. And then when you get done with it, you can get it back to Microsoft Word a variety of ways. I found that emailing is pretty easy because you just tap to email it to yourself. And it asks you, do you want to email it as a Pages document? No, I don't. As a Microsoft Word document, yes, and then it goes. So that's pretty handy. There's an Office suite called Quick Office HD that I was tempted by, but I didn't buy. It's $20, and it has a spreadsheet, a presentation program, and a word processing program that it claims 100% compatibility with Microsoft Office. Evernote is probably the one that you want to know about. That I find useful. Yesterday in our general education core, I was just taking notes. It's a nice program because it's cloud-based, and Evernote notes that I take on my iPad automatically are available on my computer. And so that I find that helpful. Good note-taking for just typing notes. The other one, I thought I would use this, I really haven't. Notability is an interesting idea, because Notability is another note-taking app that you can type, but you don't have to type. You can also use the pen and just draw and sketch. And the thing that's kind of interesting about this, when I use any kind of sketching device, I never find that I can write small enough. And Notability has this little function here that brings up a window that allows me to write in a relatively large place down here, but it's relatively small up there. And actually, I could see that as a place to do handwriting notes if you want to take handwriting notes. I've played with it some. I have to say, I'm not sure that it's going to become a useful tool. But if you say, you know, I really want something that I could type, but I also could sketch something, draw something, or take a handwritten note, it'll do all of them. There are umpteen million note-taking apps out there. Bamboo Paper is another one that I've got. Haven't used much, but those are writing things. For storage, I have used Numbers, the database from Apple, that in it, like Pages, will open and export Microsoft Excel documents. And I've found that somewhat useful. I used it for taking roll in my desktop publishing classes last semester, and just send it back to my computer as a, you know, as a Word, as an Excel document. Semi-useful. Not sure that I'm nuts about it because I don't like the way you enter data on the touch screen, but it works. My wife uses Bento. I have never used it. She uses it to keep a database of her reading. She's an avid reader, reads tons of Christian fiction, and so she does it to keep a database of all of her reading because she found herself, because she reads so much, she read 78 books last year, novels last year. Because she reads so much of this Christian fiction, she was losing track of what she'd read when, and so she uses it as a database. She loves it. I think for certain kinds of uses academically, you might find it valuable. I have not gotten into it. Certainly one could keep a research database on it if one wanted to. It's a simple $5 program. There's also desktop versions of Bento that you can move back and forth between your PC or computer if you want to. And no mention of this would be complete without Dropbox. Most of you know about Dropbox. It's available on every computer and every iDevice that exists. Dropbox is just a cloud-based file sharing system. So when I put a file in Dropbox on my computer, that file is instantly available anywhere to me that I have an internet connection. And that's, I've found it's a marvelous way to get things on and off of the iPad, which is always a hassle. How do you get these? You can email them to yourself, and you can use Apple's cloud service. But I've found it's pretty valuable for this. You know, just for, here's our agenda for this week. So, you know, just throw it in Dropbox, and then I've got it wherever I am. So it's kind of handy. One of the, and again, I've been used. I'm not a techie, so I'm not a sophisticated Dropbox user. But Dropbox allows you to share folders with other people. So if you've not used it before, one of the nicest things, Matthew Melton and I have been working together in our religion capstone material for our department. And whenever he completes something that he did in his COM 495 in the fall, he would throw it into the shared folder in Dropbox. Then I can pull it out and look at it and utilize it. And then when I do something this spring in the Telecom 495, I'm going to throw it in there so that he has it available. So if you're not using Dropbox, it's free at the basic level. If you're not using it, definitely need it. As far as presentations, I mentioned Prezi. Prezi has a viewer. It's right there in the middle. You can't create Prezis on the iPad that I know of, but you can show them. I mentioned shared paper. AirSketch is a really interesting little presentation program. AirSketch will allow you to open PDFs. This is an ad that one of my desktop publishing students did last semester for the Lee Clarion. You should have read his Clarion, because if you see the Clarion says evacuate, aliens are coming. So that was her ad for the Clarion. And I loved it because I had given them the assignment to complete this ad according to a particular format that one uses in advertising design. It's not the only format in advertising design, but it's a very common format. And the format is this. You want to have a striking image or graphic that tells a story. So here we have a graphic that tells an interesting story. You want to have an image or logo of your product. So here we have an image of the product. And you want to have copy, advertising copy, that serves the purpose of connecting the logo and the graphic in what sometimes has been called a semiotic triangle. Well, isn't it great that I can actually draw on the screen And as I'm talking about this with my students, I can show them. This is what I mean when I say create an ad that has this triangle design underlying it. So AirSketch is a lot of fun for that. I have used it in that way. AirSketch has an additional feature, which is actually its reason for being. It's a fairly expensive program. It's $10, which for an app that's expensive. Although there's a free version. It doesn't do much stuff. But what AirSketch, the claim to fame is, if you have a network that allows it, which as of the last time I checked, ours does not. If you have a network that allows it, you can go to AirSketch without plugging it into anything. And click this little button here. Type this server address into a web browser on a computer. And then from anywhere in the room, you can be doing what I just did with your iPad. I've used this a couple of ways. There's a sneaky workaround that you can do to make it work on our network. It doesn't work on our network, but work with our computers. And I've done this a couple of times. First time I did it, it absolutely blew my students' minds. Because I was sitting in the back of the classroom purposely. I went and sat in the back of the classroom and started putting stuff on the screen and writing on it and drawing and stuff. And they were all like, "How are you doing that?" And it's a great, and again, that's a kind of that gimmicky thing, but it really is a lot of fun when you can do it. Unfortunately, this system that AirSketch uses to do this raises security concerns. And because of that, our network doesn't let that function. But to me, this is the future. One of these days, all of those issues are going to get worked out. And I think eventually we're going to have devices that all we have to do is walk into the room with the device, click something, and we'll be presenting from anywhere, anyway. And not just changing from one slide to the other, but as with this one, actually drawing, writing, using it as if it were a whiteboard. And that's my hope for the future. Yeah, that's one way that I've used this device with my desktop publishing class. Second way that I've used it is that Kindle happens to have both of the textbooks that I use for desktop publishing available as Kindle books. So I can, on the computer in the desktop classroom, have the program running, which we use Adobe InDesign. So I got Adobe InDesign running there. I've got my iPad plugged into the other connector, and all I have to do is switch back and forth. So I can say to them, okay, we're going to, let's look at fonts today and typography. So here's the section we're going to be looking at in the book, and we're going to be looking at this material on the different families of fonts. And without having to create a PowerPoint, or I've got it available for the students to see and look at. That's useful. Even more useful, though, whoops, I didn't need to leave Kindle. Even more useful than that is our textbook, the Adobe InDesign Classroom book, is available so that I can actually show them something that, okay, we're going to be working with layers today. Here's what, here's an illustration of how this works, so that you can see on your computers what it's going to look like. You can see conceptually what it's going to look like. You want to go to your textbook, this is where it is. I have found that to be quite handy in a class where showing stuff from the textbook is valuable. I also have my religion capstone books on here, and not really that useful. I've never shown them pages of text. There's no real point in it. But for a class like this one, it's hugely valuable. So that's another way that I've been using it. And I love the fact that I can switch instantly back and forth between the computer and this, because then I can show them something with the program. Here's how this works, and then show them maybe conceptually a diagram or something like that. Quite handy. I mean, the other thing that and this is what you start thinking of things. Something I've always done in the desktop publishing class is I've had them bring in documents to review for desktop publishing. So they'll bring in a document and they'll say, okay, they'll hold it up in front of the classroom and say, okay, what I like about this one is they use this slab thick sans serif font for the, And in the media lab where I teach this, we've got 16 computers that the people on the sides can't see what somebody in the middle of the room is doing. And so I got to thinking this over the break. This thing's got a camera on it. And why not, when they bring in something like this, just pop it up there and take a picture of it. And let them go to the screen and talk about, you know, and I've never done this before. I don't know how it's going to work. But I know what I'm doing now doesn't work very well. Most of the class can't see what they're showing. And when they're trying to explain some, you know, okay, I like the way they use centered text here, the way they align things, or the proximity, most of the class is just kind of lost. But I think now we're going to be able to do this, and, you know, very simple, just nothing to it. And we'll help them to do this. So those are ways that I have used, ways I'm thinking about using. Those of you who've been using iPads, what are the apps that work for you that we need to know about? And I'll just jump into the App Store so that we can see them.
While they're thinking, Joel, would this read to you like the Kindle will? So like Jonathan would be able to hear books, or would it?
I've not done it, but it will. Actually, you have the Kindle app that does all the stuff the Kindle app does.
It does. Okay.
Now, I've used the Bible read. The Bible will read to it, and I've had it do. I've used it that way, but I'm sure it would. Yeah. Yes.
Does it do Charlton Heston?
What?
I said, is it Charlton Heston?
No, I don't know. Yeah.
Of course, Audible.com also has an app for this, and you can get vast
Audible
array
has
of
an
books.
iPad. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. He uses Audible a lot.
Good. Good. Yeah, that's the thing. There's things I know about you don't know about that I don't. So share those thoughts. Yeah, that's good. Other ones that you used are interesting.
A couple of apps, it's not free, but there are two sites, Laridian.com, L-A-R-I-D-A-D-I-A-N, and OliveTree.com are two great resources for any kind of biblical resources.
Yeah.
They have some materials that are free, and of course, as new versions come out, also you can literally put an entire Bible on your iPad or iPhone.
Yeah. The number of biblical-related study materials that's out there is just overwhelming. Spend a whole hour just looking at those if we have somebody who's more of an expert in that.
How, I know they come in different sizes of memory. I don't have one. And I was wondering what size you would recommend for, like, what you found useful? Or
so many things are available through cloud storage now.
Okay.
And cloud storage is basically, it really isn't a cloud. Somebody has a server somewhere, a physical server, and you are, you know, remotely connecting to it. That's what a cloud service is. And Dropbox is a cloud service. Evernote uses the same. And Apple's iCloud, which I have played around with iCloud a little bit with my wife's computer because it has Lion on it, which is the new operating system that will work with iCloud. I haven't really gotten where I'm comfortable with using it. But with so many things available that way, I'm not sure you need very much storage. Yeah, I think you can get by, certainly with the smallest one. I bought the middle size for this one, and I've not even begun to, you know, come close to filling it. We have the smallest one of the iPad one, and never have had even a question. Now, I've never done anything much with movies. Apple's iMovie is about the only that I know of, about the only widely used video editing that's available for the iPad. There are 2 or 3 others that I've looked at, and every time I've looked at them, the user comments have been so abysmally bad, I have decided not to risk any money on them. I haven't used iMovie. People who are video professionals scoff at it, but if you just need to throw some quick things together, take a little video. I don't know how many of you have heard Trevor Milliron talk about what he's planning to do in his, but in his master's in counseling, they have a requirement to video certain interactions with clients and then bring excerpts of those videos to class to talk about, and the clients sign off on confidentiality agreements, understanding this is going to happen because it's a learning experience for these people. And he said it's always been impossible to manage this because you've got to check out video cameras, you've got to manage where is this video going to be stored, you've got to edit this stuff. Well, what he's doing now, since it's a graduate program, he can do this, he's requiring everybody to buy an iPad. And then they've got a video camera on here, and so they video their interaction with their client. They drop it into iMovie and edit out, edit down a piece that they want to show. And then he's going to use an Apple TV, which is a device that connects to a screen, so that they can wirelessly connect to the Apple TV and in their class show, here's the interaction I want to show and talk about and unpack. So that's a brilliant use, but it requires everybody to own an iPad. So you're not going to do it at the undergraduate level. Now, if you're going to do that kind of thing, you're going to use up a lot of storage. But I think you definitely don't need a lot of storage with these things for average uses. Other thoughts, comments, questions?
For writing, Dragon Dictation,
I've used that a little bit, yeah. Dragon Dictation does, if you have one of the new iPhones, where you can, instead of typing, just talk to it and it will type on the screen what you say. Dragon Dictation does that. I have that, I've just not used it very much, but it's good, it works.
I am a user of Dragon Natural Speaking on the computer. So when they get the application, I got it immediately because it's an excellent software.
Yeah. It's basically you hit the record button, talk to it, it types what you said. And it does it very, very well.
And it learns from you. And you
learn. It gets better as you use it. So. Yeah, that's I don't know why I haven't used it much because it is
the best part of it is that it does cover languages. I use it for Spanish, of course, because my English isn't good enough so you can understand things. But I design everything and dictate and write articles and then long pages.
Good.
And it's really, really
so you find it works pretty well for lengthy.
I use it every day.
Good. That was my worry when I tried it on some simple short things and it worked, but I never kind of went back to it to see if it would work with a longer. So I could see that.
My excuse is that I have carpal syndrome problems, so I cannot be typing. I do type it out there.
And again, Jonathan might be able to use something like that in order to write articles and save him some of the steps.